What's going on, everyone? It's me, Lone. I hope you're doing alright. Today, I'd like to talk about Starfield, because recently the game's lead quest designer Will Shen, who mind you no longer works at the company, has come out to say that the ending of the game's main questline was really rushed during development, in part because of how large Bethesda Game Studios has grown over the years. So in today's video, I'd like to cover what he said so we know exactly the kinds of issues they were encountering during the development of the game. So overall, we can try and answer the question, has Bethesda Game Studios grown too large? Have they added too many developers to their team? That's what we'll be talking about today. But first, I'd like to talk about the sponsor of today's video, Private Internet Access. Private Internet Access is a world-class virtual private network, or VPN for short, which hides your IP address and encrypts your internet connection. Importantly, it has over 30 million downloads and an excellent Trustpilot rating. One of the biggest benefits of using Private Internet Access is that it works with all major streaming services like Netflix. This means you'll be able to access regional restricted TV shows and movies from across the world, which might not otherwise be available in your home country. Watching Netflix without private internet access is like paying for a meal but not getting your full order, so don't get caught out by not using it. Plus, private internet access is available for all platforms like Windows, macOS, Android, and iPhone. And it even has this awesome new feature where you can use the one subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. So even though I have private internet access on my computer, I can still pick up my phone, select a region, and turn on the VPN whenever I please. And thanks to private internet access, you all have the ability to get a very special offer. By clicking on the promo link in the description or in the pinned comment, you can get an 83% discount to private internet access, plus an extra 4 months completely for free. So don't miss out on this offer, and a huge thank you to private internet access for supporting my content. Now, let's get back to the video. Alrighty, so let's talk about what Will Shen has said about Starfield and some of the issues they were encountering as the game was being developed, especially when it comes to the game's main questline. So I was informed about what he said by a PC Gamer article that is linked in the description below, and it's titled Starfield's lead quest designer had absolutely no time and had to hit the panic button so the game would have a satisfying final quest. The article starts off by saying, Starfield may have over 1,000 planets, but the ending of the game's main quest, mild spoilers incoming, involves just a single one, Masada 3. First, there's a big space battle while orbiting the planet, then you have to fight your way through dozens of enemies on the surface and underground, culminating in a final battle that sees you bouncing around different dimensions to locations you visited earlier in the game. The creation of this lengthy final quest was all very last minute, according to former Starfield lead quest designer Will Shen, and only came together out of necessity and urgency. At the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco on Tuesday, Shen and former Fallout 76 lead level designer Daryl Briner gave a joint talk about the importance of collaboration when it comes to level and quest design. The two developers worked together for nearly 15 years on Bethesda RPGs like Skyrim, Fallout 4, and Fallout 76. Near the end of the talk, Shen spoke about the final quest of Starfield, specifically what it was lacking. Quote, we were finally at a state in the project where we could play through the whole game, and it became very clear that we were missing the large final location that was going to tie the story together and have a satisfying action-filled playoff, Shen said. I was both implementing the main quest and leading the quest design team, so I had absolutely no time. The entire quest design team was already overbooked. Part of the issue, Shen said, was the sheer size of the team working on Starfield. Skyrim's development team was around 100 people, which made collaboration between different departments easier. That team size grew to about 150 for Fallout 4, then over 350 for Fallout 76, and 500 plus for Starfield. That's not just Bethesda Game Studios, but outside developers like Machine Games, Nobody Studios, Arcane Snowed In, and The Forge Interactive. According to Shen and Briner, the sheer number of people working on a game across different studios can cause problems. It's more difficult than ever to know who does what, who you're supposed to report to, Briner said. A fractured team can also create a silo effect, where every department is scrambling for resources and saying no to collaboration requests, said Shen. This can lead to the inadvertent consequence of favoring the department over the needs of the game, as well as slowing down even basic collaboration between departments to a crawl. Every request now has to go through all the producers because we needed to check all of the contingent work, Shen said. Asking for something as simple as a chair wasn't so simple. Do you need animations for it? Do you need sound effects for it? How much does that add to the schedule? Can it not fit because one of those teams does not have the time? As it became clear Starfield's main quest was missing a big final set piece and there wasn't enough time to create one, Shen turned to senior level designer Steve Cornett. He was definitely our panic button, Shen said. Cornette had the idea for dimension hopping, which would let the player revisit several key locations from earlier in the game, and more importantly, save the time of crafting entirely new locations for the final battle. When facing approaching deadlines, desperation can break departments out of their silos and get them collaborating again, but it shouldn't work that way. You don't need to wait for an emergency in order to do this, Shen said. Clear, consistent project level goals and communication will keep everyone focused on what they need to focus on. Alright, so let's cover what Will had to say about Starfield, and I want to start off by saying this, right? I really do appreciate how open and honest and transparent Will was being about the situation, right? About how, yes, they encountered big issues when developing the game, especially when it comes to the main quest. To me, it goes to show that this stuff is completely normal. In any development studio, whether it's a small one or a medium one or a large one, you talk to any developer in there, they will tell you that we encounter issues all the time. It's completely normal, and we shouldn't be critical of a team for saying that they've encountered issues, right? Because there's no way of getting around that. Yes, you can mitigate as many issues as you can through planning and organizing teams and whatever it might be, but it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to have some issues when making a game. Games are incredibly complex. They involve collaboration between so many people. They take years and years to make. Encountering issues like this during development is completely normal. And I want us to make devs feel comfortable to be able to talk about this, because all it's doing is, one, highlighting how normal it is again within development, but two, I think it helps budding developers feel a little bit better about the situation. If you're going into a new team, whether again it's a small indie studio or a large AAA studio, when you're encountering issues like this, that's fine. Don't get freaked out. You're not doing anything wrong necessarily. This kind of experience and this kind of knowledge is crucial. That's why I appreciate people like Will going to a GDC and speaking about their experiences making video games, because it just helps other developers do their thing. So that's the first big thing that I want to say. Number two, I want to clarify what Will said about the team growing in size, because he said they encountered issues not just because BGS grew in size themselves. Like, obviously Bethesda Game Studios has gotten bigger. They've added more devs to the team since Fallout 3 and Skyrim and Fallout 4 and even Fallout 76. That was part of the issue. But also he said it was because we had other studios helping us out with the game. And Bethesda and many other publishers and developers like to do this, especially as you get closer to a game's launch. They might pull devs and resources and team members from literally completely other studios to help with the game to get it out the door. That happens all the time, and that in part is also what caused some of these issues with Starfield, right? Because you have other people from Arcane and other studios helping you out. So it's not just that BGS got too big, it's because they had other developers from other studios helping out, and they have their own different processes. They have their own ways of going about things. So they're coming essentially from the outside in to try and help out. And that, of course, it's completely normal to cause issues, right? They're not quite sure how they fit in. They're not sure who they report to, because I'm in a completely different team now. I maybe haven't worked with you before. I can easily see how they cause some sort of issues. So again, it's not just because BGS has grown large. I'll talk about that in a second. But because they needed to get the game out the door, it had already been delayed at that stage. They needed other studios and other devs within Xbox and Microsoft to help them out. And that is a source of issues when it comes to developing the game. And then, yeah, number three, I can easily see how that kind of situation would develop, because it takes years to even get to the stage internally where a game is actually playable from start to finish. It might not be ready for launch, but at some stage it's ready to be played from start to end. Beforehand, of course, they're playing the game, but they're playing it in a different way, in a more piecemeal way. They're testing out a mechanic, or they're making sure a side quest is complete and is all good. That kind of stuff. But at some stage, they're actually able to play the game like a proper video game, go through the main story from start to end. And I can easily see how at that stage, those kinds of content gaps become way more apparent than maybe they otherwise would have before that point. And then I think that's what Will was getting at, because I don't think he was suggesting that we never had any kind of main battle in our first draft, if you will. I think the situation was when they got to that point where they played the game from start to end and they went through that first draft of that battle, they probably thought, you know what, this isn't as fleshed out as that should be. It's not acting like a proper fitting conclusion to this big overall story and main quest that we're trying to tell. That's why I think he said they hit the panic button and they tried to add something cooler to make the main battle feel a bit more grand to act as a fitting conclusion. So I think that's why they added the whole you can go into dimensions and have that final battle to make it feel a little bit more cooler, to act as a better conclusion for the overall story. Because you know us as gamers, when we go through a big main quest line, we want that big final battle. Typically, that's what you get in an action RPG. So I think that is exactly what Will was getting at. You might differ in your opinion, let me know in the comments below. And you know what? I never actually thought, when I was playing the main quest line of Starfield, that it felt rushed in any way. Starfield has its issues, and I've talked at length about the issues that I've had with the game, and I'm sure you have issues with the game. But for me personally, you might not agree, but for me personally, the main quest was never the issue with the game, right? I actually really liked the main quest. I compared it being better than Fallout 3, and Fallout 3 is my favorite game of all time, and even I could admit the main quest in Starfield was better. I liked the quest in Starfield when it comes to the main quest, and I never got the feeling, I never got the sense that it was rushed in development. All things considered, they did an alright job to get it together if it actually had those big issues. And I trust that Will said, you know, it had those issues when it comes to development, especially because of the size of the team and all that stuff that I mentioned before. But let's get to the size of the team, because Will did say it was in part at least a reason why we had these kinds of issues. So when you look at Fallout 3 had over 80 devs working on the team. It's crazy to say in hindsight, but it only had over 80 people working on the game. With Skyrim, it was over 100, yeah? So of course, having a larger development team can help create a bigger game. That's the idea. You have more people working on a game, it's grander, there are more quest lines, more mechanics, and all that good stuff, right? But of course, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a better game or even a good game, right? Larger doesn't always mean better. Bigger doesn't always mean better. It can cause issues. And if you've ever worked in any kind of big company, you'll know exactly what I mean, right? I've gone from very small teams to very large teams, and everything is slower. There's so much more red tape. There's so much more things that you have to go through. When I was working in small teams, you know, in my professional career, you're able to be much more agile. Yes, you can only get so much done because you're a smaller team, but things are much more flexible. There are less lines of communication. There are less levels of approval to go through. So you can adapt and get things done a little bit faster than maybe a big studio or a big company. They have to keep talking with each other. You're going through producers. You're making sure that all the teams have everything that they need. Projects and development teams can get incredibly complex to manage when you're getting to that size. And this is why I've said in the past that it's not a good idea for BGS just to add another 100 developers or 200 developers, because people have been saying, why can't they just, double their team size to make Fallout 5 at the same time as Elder Scrolls 6, right? People have been saying that for ages and ages and ages. But you can't just do that because one, recruitment is really hard. You have to find the right people. It takes a long time. But two, you get issues like this. If you do not grow organically, you can find the situation, especially if you don't have as much experience in a really big studio. You're going from a studio of 80 people to over 500. Those kinds of issues can develop, and then you can have it affecting your game in a negative way. So no, BGS is not just going to hire another bunch of people so they can make Fallout 5 and Elder Scrolls 6 faster. That's just not going to happen, especially with the climate of the video games industry today. They're not going to be able to get the budget approved anyways to hire more people. But also that's why it's not a good idea. They need to grow a little bit more organically, so these kinds of issues are learnt upon and they're hopefully never made again. And I believe, this is what I fundamentally believe, that when it comes to Elder Scrolls 6, because they have all this experience now, all these years of experience in developing Starfield and encountering these kinds of issues when it comes to working in a big team, hopefully, when it now comes to developing Elder Scrolls 6, they are much better at doing that, so we're not encountering these kinds of issues, or they're not encountering these kinds of issues again. When they're developing a main quest, in the middle of developing it, they know they need to have a much bigger, final battle, and they need to put more emphasis in certain areas of the game. So that is what Will Shen had to say about Starfield. I'd love to know what you think in the comments below. But until next time, this has been the Lone Vault Wanderer. Please take care of yourselves, and would you kindly keep fighting the good fight.